If you've been thinking about moving to Florida, maybe Delray Beach or somewhere in South Florida, there's 5 things that scare the bejesus out of people every time they come and start looking at property. You don't want to be one of those. So in this video, I'm going to talk about those 5 things, get you informed, get you educated, so you are not surprised when you get here. Florida is the fastest growing city in the United States. Over 350,000 people are moving here every year. That's over 1,000 people a day. Why? Well, it could be the 1,350 miles of white sand beach we have. It could be that we don't have any state income tax. Or what about the coconut trees and the palm trees? All of that doesn't matter because there is no such place as paradise. And people don't know about these 5 things that literally scare the crap out of them when we start looking at real estate. Today, we're going to unleash those 5 things. You need to be informed. You need to be educated so that you have no surprises when you come down here and start planning your future. Hi, this is John Whelan with EXP Realty. If this is your first time on my channel, can you do me a favor? Subscribe to my channel, hit that bell so you're notified every time a new video drops. Today we're getting into these 5 issues that I think are critical for you to know. So the first thing I want to talk about is homeowners insurance in Florida. It's not easy, it's complicated, it's kind of a disaster, and rates just keep going up and up and up without any slowing in sight. There's a lot of things happening at the government level. I'm not going to get into all the complexities because it's just too confusing, but there's several different essays that have been written that kind of give you an overview of what's happening so you're prepared when you start looking to buy real estate here. Here's an article by Bankrate that says, the crisis in the Florida insurance market since 2017, 6 property and casualty companies that have offered homeowners insurance in Florida have liquidated. 5 more are in the process of liquidating 2022, which is actually still in 2023. Other insurance companies are voluntarily leaving the state. Even more are choosing to non-renew swaths of home insurance policies, drastically tightening their policy eligibility requirements or request substantial rate increases. Additionally, take a look at this. It goes on to say that Florida accounts for only 9% of the country's home insurance claims, but 79% of its home insurance lawsuits, a high percentage of those, are fraudulent. Continuing, because of the fraudulent lawsuits and the high overall risk in Florida, insurance companies have now lost over $1 billion of losses. And of course, now last year we had Hurricane Ian, which only caused more strife for the marketplace. So Florida has storm risk, of course, the hurricanes, which over the last dozen years, they become more frequent and stronger. We have aging roof issues. Basically, 20 years is the maximum limit that insurance company will provide a policy for a homeowner. Usually around the 15th year is when they start giving notices to owners that you need to start thinking about replacing, or you might not have your policy renewed. And go back to that Bankrate essay where they give a complete insurance fraud, how the fraud works with the roofers and the insurance adjusters and the homeowners and the pressure and the signing the contracts and numbers not matching. It's a mess. You got to go back and read that. But now what I want to take a look at is what's going on with Citizens Insurance Group. It's a state-backed insurance group that has taken on more and more policies as more and more companies like Farmers Insurance, USAA, a lot of the large private insurance companies have left the state of Florida, putting more pressure on the state-backed Citizens Insurance Group. And just this month of June 2023, they requested a 12% increase for homeowners insurance policies in the state of Florida. Right now their reserves have been dropped by 33%. So they're trying to get increased to cover their reserves, but it gets even crazier. Right here they say increases could be dramatically higher for homes that are not primary residences. The state will allow up to a 50% increase in the premium. That's bonkers. So if you don't live here and it's not your primary resident, you live up in New York, you could be involved in a much higher insurance rate than you can imagine. Next up is this article that came out by FloridaRealtors.org. It talks about the 4 misconceptions about flood insurance. I'm going to put it up on the screen here. You can take a look at that. Let's go through those real quickly. People think that, number one, homeowners insurance policies cover flood damage. No, that's not true. They usually just cover like faucets or sinks or things in the bathtubs, things that break inside the house. But the homeowner insurance policy does not cover flood. Number two, only people who live in floodplains needs insurance. That's not the case. You could be out of the area, and what if you just get, 2 or 3 inches of water in your house? That's enough damage to cause dry rot and different molding issues and replacing of your drywall. So no, even if you live outside of a floodplain, you will need additional policy for flood insurance. Number three, there's nothing you can do to prevent flood damage. That's not true. Remove trees. Clean your gutters. There's a lot of things that you can do with sandbagging to prepare yourself from any flooding potential that you see coming forth. And number four, insurance companies only help you after the incident takes place. Not true. Call your insurance company before that happens. Read your policy. There's a lot of things that they can do in advance. If they know that you're in the line of danger, be in communication with your insurance company and let them know exactly what's happening. And last, I want to give you this one essay by Forbes. It's a new essay here in the middle of 2023. Talks about best homeowners insurance. It gives a really nice update about insurance companies, some policies and premiums that you might be expecting, and also another general overview of what's happening in this complicated, nutty world of insurance in Florida. Number two on our list is homeowners associations, of course, condo associations, and what's going on with regulations and pricing. Well, there's a couple of essays that I want you to read. It's important. Let's take a look at the first one. This comes from South Florida Agent. Did you know that 45% of all homes in Florida are part of an HOA? Basically, 3.9 million out of 8.6 million homes in Florida are inside an HOA. And they say that if you have a home inside of a homeowner association, it's about a 4% increased value compared to the other homes out there. But things are changing with an HOA. Of course, these are fees that you pay on a monthly or quarterly basis, and you don't have the control over whether they go up or down. But I'll give you some news. I've never seen homeowner association fees go down. They only go up. So what's happening is there's another great essay here for you in The Real Deal. Take a look at this. It talks about the condo safety law eliminated condo and homeowners associations' ability to waive the funding of reserves, giving them until the end of 2024 to raise their monthly dues or enact special assessments to fully fund reserves if needed by the start of 2025. It requires buildings to have an architect or engineer complete structural integrity reserve studies, which then determine how much a building has had in its reserve. And Senate Bill number 154 continues to say this: it requires that buildings of 3 stories or taller to go through inspections once they are 30 years old or 25 years old if within 3 miles of the coastline, and every 10 years after that. So here's the bottom line, folks. HOA fees are going up. We stated earlier that the average HOA in the state of Florida is $387 a month. Don't let that fool you. That includes the whole state. But most folks coming down to South Florida, for example, Delray Beach, Boca Raton, going south to Fort Lauderdale, it's not going to be uncommon to see HOA fees of between $1,000 and $1,200. That's because of the proximity to the ocean and erosion that the salt takes place. So HOA fees have a lot of pressure on them, and the trend is that the fees are going to continue to go up for the near future. Which takes me to number 3 on our list, which is talking about assessments or special assessments within HOAs or common associations. Here's the deal. Over the last 18 months, or ever since the 2021 Surfside building collapsed in South Florida, now all the buildings in South Florida have been putting in assessments to replace their balconies, redo their parking structures, redo all the stuff with metal determined. And there's been some properties I've seen where the assessments were between $20 and $40 million. So if you take that number, $20 million, divided by, let's say, 100 units in a building, it's a lot of money. It's $200,000 whammy hitting your pocketbook right away, and a lot of people can't afford that. Assessments are a part of our life right now. It's not a bad thing looking forward. These are buildings that needed the work done anyway, and now the law came in place and putting these demands in place, We're getting the special assessments done. High percentage of them are already completed, but we still have till the end of 2024 for the completion to be thorough and completed. But just look at, if you're looking at condos here in South Florida, make sure you ask about the assessments. Have they already been paid? Have they already been levied? And what's the plan moving forward? Now, the fourth thing that might still scare the crap out of you, but a lot of people put it under the rug. They don't pay attention to it. They kind of think it's kind of weird. But if you don't live in Florida, if you live somewhere up north and are not paying attention to our storms, number 4 is all about the climate change, rains, flooding, everything that's actually happening here locally that we deal with, hear about, and live through where you may not. So I want to take a look at a few things that give you a perspective of exactly what's happening here in South Florida. First thing I want to take a look at is earlier this year, back in April of 2023, was a storm that came out of nowhere that walloped Fort Lauderdale. As a matter of fact, in a 24-hour period, they got 25 inches of rain. I lived in Costa Rica for 12 years. That is a hard rain to see 25 inches. That's something you do not see everywhere. Flooding was all over Fort Lauderdale. Cars, total loss vehicles. I have a good friend of mine, Mario, hi Mario, who works for Geico Insurance for the last 20 years. Total loss vehicles were all over the place. So you may have not seen this on the national news. Locally, it was a big thing. It's all about the amount of rain, the intensity of storms that we're getting, and of course, sea rise. So there's another item here you want to take a look at by the Office of Resilience for Miami-Dade County. They do a report about sea rise, the rising issues and flooding. They give awesome charts about the projections of what's going on, impacts of sea rise, adapting to it, preparing for it, and the history of what's going on. And it shows by facts, by actual incidents. I've been living here for 8 years. I've already seen 4 major hurricanes come through this area. There was a total of 8 in total, but they've gotten more intense and more damage, and the financial loss has been more and more significant each and every time. So sea rise is an issue, and if you want to debate that, here's a little piece by NPR, National Public Review, that gives beautiful art renderings and scenarios of what's happening in Miami, in the South Florida area, and what they project it's going to happen over the next 20 years. They're saying that by 2040, we should see sea levels rise in South Florida by about 17 inches. So that's 1.5 feet higher water. And when you're talking about storm surge and storms coming in through this area, through hurricanes, flooding is a massive issue. It might not be a big issue if you're living in Chicago, or if you're living in Indiana, it's not a part of it. But if you're thinking about moving to Florida, anywhere in Florida, what's happening with storms and surge is a big issue to be thinking about. Now, the fifth and final thing that might just scare the crap out of you is about the Florida real estate prices being so high. I put quotations on that because if you look around the country, and I've got some stats in here to show you, prices have risen in Florida over the last 10 years, especially in the last few years, pre-pandemic levels. It's gone crazy, double-digit figures. But a lot of people come here thinking that they're going to buy cheap property in Florida. Their mindset is still back in 2010 after the Great Recession, when Florida was obliterated. You can buy things here for 30 or 40 cents on the dollar. Well, now things have basically leveled. Now prices are where they should have been, but people are thinking, where's it going? I'm not here to talk about where real estate prices are going, but I'm here to talk about if your mindset is to come here thinking that prices are too high in Florida, let's take a look at some of the facts. Here we go to start off. First of all, here's a chart that was at the end of 2022, shows the states that had the highest amount of appreciation from 2022 over 2021. Florida, 22.7%. South Carolina, 18.4%. Tennessee, almost 18%. North Carolina, 17%. You can take a look at that yourself, but there's another chart here that comes from CNBC back in January of this year, talks about the U.S. metros with the greatest percentage increase in home values in all of 2022. And on this top 10 list, 4 of them are from Florida. You have Sarasota area came in at 19.5%, Naples 17.2%. Come down below, we have Punta Gorda at 15.2%, and the Daytona area at 14.5%. So yes, Florida appreciation rates are high. It's been all over the news for the past few years. But look at this final piece that came out from Forbes in an essay late last year, talks about the 15 states with the highest average prices, and guess what? Florida is not in it. So there's a perception that prices in Florida are in orbit, that you're not going to be able to afford it here. But where I live in Delray Beach, the median price, which is if you take the high and the low, the median is the price in the middle. The median price for all of Delray Beach is only $350,000. That doesn't mean that you're going to buy something on the coast or near the beach for that. No, you're going to pay upwards of $700 or even higher. But if you go west and inland, then you can get condominiums and smaller homes for much reasonably priced properties. So Florida has a perception of being high price, and it scares a lot of people when I have conversations with them. But ultimately, you got to come down here and take a look. If you want to live somewhere where you don't have 1,300 miles of beachfront, if you don't want to live in a place that has tropical fruit, no state income tax, and all of the great things that make Florida what it is today, then you can go somewhere else in America and buy for much cheaper. It's not going to be that in Florida, but when you think the long term, if you're thinking you're going to buy high, you might end up selling low if you come into this market today. But if you're thinking long term, buying at this price, ultimately the good things and the momentum are going on in the state. It should over time continue to move forward. So which one of those 5 scares you the most? Is it insurance debacle? Is it the HOA fees? Is it the assessments? Is it the climate change and the flooding and the intensity of the storms? Or is it just the fact that Florida is on the limelight right now because of our high prices and the appreciation gains, and people just don't think that they can buy here because they're scared to death about it? Tell me which one is the most important to you. If you are thinking about moving down here and you want a free relocation guide, down below I have a link for that too. You can fill that in. Call me. My phone number is down below. Hit that subscribe button if you can help me out a little bit. People are not stopping their move to Florida. There's a lot of things that scare the crap out of people, but when you look at what Florida has to offer, this is not stopping growth in the future. See you down here soon.